All right, we are back. Another episode of Cigar and a Beverage coming to you live from the press box. That's what I call my studio here. Live from the press box in Mandeville, Louisiana, with my beer on a Sunday afternoon, Paradise Park. Thank you, Urban South. It was an incredible college football Saturday yesterday. Lots of interesting games, lots of interesting results. No real surprises except for a couple. Let's start in Atlanta yesterday, where it was the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs defeating the number 11 ranked Oregon Ducks by a lot to a little. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. 49-3 as Georgia completely dismantled Oregon. Stetson Bennett, 25 of 31 for 368 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They brought in Carson Beck later on in the game when the game was seemingly out of hand. Carson goes 5 out of 6 for 71 yards and a touchdown himself. Georgia, 571 yards of total offense, holding Oregon to 313. Oregon's quarterback, Auburn transfer Bo Nix, 21 of 37 for 173, 2 interceptions. I mean, this was not Oregon's day whatsoever. Georgia comes out, starts fast, doesn't slow down. Defense was playing seemingly the way they've been playing all year. Last year, this one wasn't even close. Not even close. Picked up right where they left off last year in the national championship game. Even with a bunch of their former teammates now playing in the National Football League. Stetson Bennett throws for 368, accounted for 3 touchdowns, revamped defense, didn't miss a step. 37, Georgia opened it up on offense. They threw the ball 37 times for a total of 439 yards. Dan Lanning was co-defensive coordinator last year at Georgia, now the head coach at Oregon. This one was just all Georgia. There's nothing more you could say about that. Georgia looked strong. Georgia looked confident. Georgia looked dominating. And against a team that was ranked number 11 in the country going into yesterday, Georgia made it look easy. Bulldogs made it look easy. Georgia had 5 players off that defense from last year selected in the first round of the NFL draft. So when you lose that much talent, the question is that defense going to be just as strong? And it was. It was. Then again, you're looking at a former SEC quarterback in Bo Nix starting for Oregon. And Bo Nix was Bo Nix. I mean, there's a reason why people didn't have confidence in him last year at Auburn. And Bo Nix is still Bo Nix. What more can be said about that? Bo Nix is still Bo Nix. And Georgia knew exactly what to do with him. Exactly what to do with him. That defense is good. They were good last year. And if they did this to the number 11 ranked team in the country, my goodness, what are they going to do to the rest of their schedule? They are a reason why. This is the reason why they are the odds-on favorite to win the SEC East and go back to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. That's all there is to it. We stay in the Southeastern Conference. In fact, let's stay in the Southeastern Conference, and then we'll go over to the rest of the top 25 in just a moment. If I pull it up here. The number 21 ranked Ole Miss Rebels go into the game yesterday as a 21.5 point favorite. And there's a reason why, just bear with me, there's a reason why I'm going to preface with that. The Ole Miss defense looked really strong for the most part in this football game. Fourth quarter, they let up a little bit, but that's all depending on who was in the game at the time. The running game is going to be stout this year because Ole Miss showed that they have 3 running backs that are capable, two running backs that are capable of making things happen. Zach Evans, the transfer from TCU, had 20 carries, 130 yards, 6.5 yards a carry. Quinshon Judkins is going to be a name that you're going to need to watch. His debut in an Ole Miss uniform, the freshman from Pike Road, Alabama. 14 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown, averaging 6.2 yards a carry. Between Evans and Judkins, it's a 1-2 punch in the running game for the Rebels. I'm calling it now. From what I saw yesterday, it's going to be a 1-2 punch at running back, running behind a veteran offensive line. So the defense was strong. The running attack was great. Question mark still at quarterback. Lane Kiffin decides he's going to go with Jackson Dart yesterday at quarterback. And Jackson Dart's stats, 18 for 27, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, and a pick. Excuse me. Jackson Dart looked pedestrian. And that's the good way of saying it. He struggled getting the ball down the field. He struggled a little bit from what I saw. Not really impressive, but we also have to understand that this kid is only 19 years old. The native of Kaysville, Utah, sophomore transfer from USC, has a quarterback rating of 119.4 after yesterday's game. But there's going to be a lot to work on for this kid. He's going to have a lot to improve. And this is going to be an interesting journey for both quarterbacks at Ole Miss. Now, Lane Kiffin came out and said that Luke Altmaier, who did get some playing time yesterday late in the game, will be the starter against Central Arkansas next week. Let's see how Luke Altmaier does against Central Arkansas, and then Lane Kiffin's going to decide who his starter is going to be moving forward, starting with Georgia Tech in 2 weeks. Rebels did win the football game, however, 28-10. Troy covered the spread. I thought this one was going to be more of an offensive explosion. Apparently I was wrong. But it was that running attack by Ole Miss that really encouraged me, really impressed me. This is that part of the offense is what's really going to carry Ole Miss this season, I think. Zach Evans was strong, man. Zach Evans was strong. But here's the problem. Look, I'm going to call it like I see it. The offense struggled in the second half. I mean, really, really struggled in the second half. And that's going to be an issue if they can't get that fixed. Now, it's easier to work on those problems after a win. But if they would have lost that football game yesterday, which, let's face it, with the way the defense played against Troy yesterday, Ole Miss was never really in any danger of losing that football game. But there may come a time during the course of the season where the defense may not be able to keep them in a football game, and this is where the offense is going to have to step up. And if that passing game can't improve, Ole Miss is going to have some problems. Let's see what happens against Central Arkansas. Let's see what happens against Georgia Tech. The next 2 weeks are going to be somewhat critical. Let's see what happens there. Again, love my Rebels. Love what I saw from the defense. Love what I saw from the passing game. But that second half offense and the struggles that they had throwing the ball down the field is a bit concerning. But teams tend to make their biggest improvements, and this is across the board. Teams tend to make their biggest improvements during the course of the season from week 1 to week 2. So with Altmaier getting to start next week, reportedly getting to start next week against Central Arkansas, is this what Ole Miss needs? Let's see. And then again, Lane Kiffin is going to make a decision from there. Sticking with Ole Miss, just real quick, defensively, we saw a breakout game for Kyrie Coleman. Kyrie Coleman is a junior out of New Orleans, 6'2", 220-pound linebacker. But he's more of a hybrid. He can line up at defensive end and be an edge rusher depending on what Chris Partridge, defensive coordinator, needs. But he's primarily a linebacker. He had 8 tackles, 2 sacks. 7 of those 8 tackles were solo. He lived in the backfield, the Troy backfield, pretty much all day yesterday. He was he was a spark for that defense. This is going to be a very talented kid. And I'm going to be really watching him throughout the course of the season. Tysheem Johnson had 12 tackles, 6 solo. Troy Brown, Otis Reese stepped up. Those are names, and A.J. Finley had a decent game. Those 5 guys are what is going to lead this Ole Miss defense, and if they're on, they're on. Watch for it. Watch for it. This Ole Miss defense is going to be really good, I have a feeling. Much better than last year, by the way. Number 1 team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide, a winner 55-0. Bryce Young, 18 for 28, 195, 5 touchdowns. He also carried the ball 5 times for 100 yards, added another touchdown. Bama was Bama. I mean, I'm not going to give you any more recaps. 55-0 over Utah State. Utah State never really in the ball game. Period. I mean, Alabama put up 559 yards of total offense. They were really balanced. 281 through the air, 278 on the ground. I mean, you can't get any more balanced than that. You really can't. And there it is. Bama was Bama. $55-0, the Crimson Tide, a winner. Texas A&M, the number 6 ranked team in the country, 31-0 over Sam Houston. They had a 3-hour rain delay at halftime yesterday, and it kind of slowed A&M down a little bit, but not to the point where they were going to lose the football game over Sam Houston. 31-0, the final there for Texas A&M. Their quarterback, Haynes King, the sophomore out of Longview, Texas, 20 out of 31 for 364 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw 2 interceptions. So if there was a bright spot for Sam Houston, they forced a couple of Texas A&M turnovers. But that was really, it's pretty much the bright spot for Sam Houston, for the Bearcats on defense. They did throw for 4. They were held. I'm sorry. Sam Houston was held to 198 yards of total offense. A&M at 497, 387 through the air. The running game was non-existent for Texas A&M. It was all pass. It was majority through the air. Okay. Next week, A&M plays Appalachian State. We're going to get to, that reminds me, I'm going to get to Appalachian State here during the course of this broadcast. Because Appalachian State is not going to be a pushover. Really not going to be a pushover. So let's just hold Appalachian State in the back of your mind for a second as we continue in this program. So, yeah, Texas A&M will win 31-0. Here's the surprise. And it's coming out of Gainesville, where Anthony Richardson, the quarterback for first-year head coach Billy Napier at Florida, had a coming-out party and showed the nation that this might be a dark horse Heisman contender. Anthony Richardson threw 17 for 24, 168 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He ran 11 times for 106 yards and had 3 touchdowns. Florida was masterful in this football game against Utah. And it's tough for a team that has to come from out west to the deep south in Gainesville, where the climate, and this is going to be one of the only times you hear me talk about climate on this program, where the climate is totally different. There's a lot of humidity in the south. I mean, let's just call it for what it is. There's a lot of humidity in the south. And Utah did what they could to stay in it. And it was a back and forth game in the whole game. It was a great football game. Florida scores, takes the 29-26 lead. Utah's driving down the field. They have an opportunity to tie or take the lead with 22 seconds left in the ball game. And Utah quarterback Cameron Rising throws a costly interception that sealed the game for Florida. Rising 22 of 32 for 216, 1 touchdown and the costly interception. And the number 7 ranked Utah Utes goes down in week 1 to Florida. Huge win for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators here in week 1. Huge. I mean, big time win for Florida. Again, Richardson ran for 3 scores in his second career start, including a 2-yard scamper with 1:25 to go. And Florida with the big upset over number 7 Utah 29-26 at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium last night. Richardson was the best player on the field most of the night, and he really showed down the stretch. Although it was fifth-year linebacker Amari Burney who sealed the deal for Florida, intercepting Cam Rising with 17 seconds to go. And 90,799 in attendance went completely ballistic. That 90,799 top 10, a top 10 in attendance last night. 33rd consecutive victory in home season openers for Florida, longest current streak in the nation. Richardson's best play of the night came on an electrifying 2-point conversion early in the fourth quarter that put Florida up 22-19. He juked former Florida teammate Mohamed Diabate with a pump fake and then sprinted right by fellow Utah linebacker Lander Barton before throwing a strike to Jaquavion Fraziers in the back of the end zone. Utah answered and briefly took the lead, but Richardson responded. He moved the chains with a third down throw and again with a fourth down run, both of which set up the game winner. Rising moved the Utes in position to steal one for a team that entered the season with its highest preseason ranking in school history. But, again, Cam Rising throws the costly interception, and Florida comes out with the win. The difference in this football game was Florida's success and Utah's failure in the red zone. It came down to red zone play in this one. Gators scored touchdowns on all 3 trips inside the red zone. The Utes had the late turnover and were stuffed on consecutive downs at the goal line to open the third quarter. Utah had to settle for 2 field goals in the first half, one from 43 and another from 31. Here's the takeaway here in this one. And I want to thank, before I continue, I'm using ESPN for these statistics and whatnot. So, again, I am crediting ESPN with this, not plagiarizing or anything like that. I want to be clear. I am crediting ESPN with the information that I'm getting for this entire broadcast. The takeaway for Utah was this. They showed resiliency, battling back to take the lead late in the fourth quarter. And despite the loss, the Utes have enough talent and experience to make a run at the college football playoff. For Florida, they don't look like they'll be in rebuilding mode for long. Napier's recruiting has jumped in the last couple of months, and a game like this could do wonders to help him close the gap on Alabama and Georgia. Games like this, and this is across all of college football. Games like this, you're hosting a top 10 team at home in front of a sellout crowd, 90, 91, 92,000 people, and you have a performance like this, you upset the top 10 team with recruits on their official visit to your school, and you have this type of performance and you beat a potential college football playoff contender, now recruits are going to focus in on your school and they're going to be like, things just got interesting with my recruiting. This is going to be a big time. This is the type of win that's going to pay dividends later on down the line during the season. And good luck to Billy Napier and the Florida Gators the rest of the way. Unbelievable football game that was. Another interesting football game and a great football game happened in Fayetteville yesterday as Arkansas hosted number 23 Cincinnati, and Arkansas came away with a 31-24 victory. It was a hard-fought victory for Sam Pittman's ball club. KJ Jefferson it was not named to any preseason All SEC conference teams, and he felt disrespected. And his performance yesterday could potentially earn more attention. Who could earn him more attention? He was the SEC's second best touchdown to interception ratio last season and was the leading returning rusher at the position in the conference. So yesterday, what did he do? Threw for 223 yards, 3 touchdowns, ran for another 62 and another touchdown. Arkansas beat Cincinnati 31-24. Not an upset because Arkansas is ranked number 19. You play number 23, hosting them at home. But look, Cincinnati was going to fight. Look, you want to say, all right, the first couple of weeks of the season for a Power 5 team, you're going to play lower end competition, cupcakes, if you will. This is not Cincinnati, not a cupcake. They were a college football playoff semifinalist last year. So this is a good football team, a very talented football team, but they still lost a lot from last year's team. Jefferson was able to establish himself as an escape artist of sorts last year. 240 pounds, proving difficult to take down. Little has changed. And through the air, he built a rapport with tight end Trey Knox, who caught 2 of the 3 touchdown tosses yesterday, including one that was quite literally a toss, a jump pass from 5 yards out to give Arkansas a 14-0 lead. But Ben Bryant, Cincinnati's transfer quarterback from Eastern Michigan, threw for more passing yards. He threw for 325 yards and 2 touchdowns, but an interception at the Arkansas 20 turned into a Razorback score on the next possession. The interception was one of several mistakes that Cincinnati had. On four of Cincinnati's first half drives ended in Arkansas territory, but the interception halted one. And Cincinnati place kicker Ryan Coe missed 2 field goals, including one from inside 30 yards. Bryant was able to throw a touchdown pass to Nick Martner, pulled within a touchdown, at the midway point of the third quarter, and then Cincinnati was able to recover a KJ Jefferson fumble inside his own 10 on the ensuing play. Bearcats started 3 yards from the end zone, but 4 penalties later, including 2 delay of games, they managed just a field goal. That was probably the turning point in this football game. So here's where the transfer portal comes into play, because most of Arkansas's big plays not involving Knox and Jefferson came from players picked up via the transfer portal. Drew Sanders from Alabama transfer had sacks. Dwight McGlothern, an LSU transfer, had an interception. Toledo transfer Matt Landers caught 3 passes for 43 yards. So these were all contributors to Arkansas in yesterday's win. Again, this is another one of those teams that hosted a top 25 opponent. Big win at home. Could go a long way. They showed a lot of resiliency. Goes a long, long way during the course of the season. And let's see how beneficial this win against Cincinnati could be. Cincinnati's rally came in large part because of the passing game, and Bryant took advantage of Arkansas losing starting nickel Miles Slusher and starting safety Jalen Calhoun late in the second quarter and early in the second half due to injuries. Bearcats' first touchdown came immediately after Jalen Catalon left the game. Sam Pittman later on said Slusher should be okay going forward, but was not quite sure about the extent of Catalon's injury. He didn't disclose any of the injuries. So we're going to have to keep a watch on what happens with Jalen Catalon. Could potentially be a big loss for Arkansas if he can't go for the next couple of weeks. Arkansas's offense with KJ Jefferson at quarterback is SEC worthy. The defense struggled in the second half. So we're going to have to watch that. And again, that's with the Jalen Catalon injury. Not sure, as Pittman said, not sure the extent of that injury. Cincinnati had talent to win the game, but they stabbed themselves in the foot. And they had their chances, but made too many mistakes. Up next, Arkansas will open up a SEC play against South Carolina at home next week. It'll be South Carolina's first visit to Fayetteville since 2013. As for Cincinnati, they host Kennesaw State at home. So there we go with those teams. Again, 31-24, Arkansas over Cincinnati. Kentucky a winner 37-13 over Miami of Ohio. Auburn had to endure a rain delay, and they defeated Mercer 42-16. Vanderbilt getting their second win in a row, 42-31 over Elon, and Mississippi State having to endure their own rain delay. Came up with a 49-23 victory over Memphis, avenging last year's loss to the Tigers. Mississippi State starts the season 1-0, and South Carolina starts the season 1-0. They were able to beat Georgia State 35-14. The game was close in the first half for a while. And South Carolina was able to pull away and defeat Georgia State by 3 touchdowns. So let's go to the remainder of the top 25. Let's take a break before we do that, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Okay, we're back. Top 25 scores from the rest of yesterday. Ohio State. This was the big game of the night. It was the Ohio State Buckeyes, 17.5-point favorite at home against Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And the game was a lot closer than what the final score indicates. 21-10, Ohio State over Notre Dame. But this was a game that C.J. Stroud, statistically, it's not going to show that he struggled, but he did. He did. If you watch the game, Notre Dame was giving him different looks, defensively giving him different looks. Stroud was struggling to get the ball down the field at times. Notre Dame had a great defensive game plan coming into this ball game, but Ohio State too darn talented to end up going down to Notre Dame. I mean, it just is what it is. It came down to talent. Notre Dame is very talented. Very talented. But Ohio State fought off the adversity, found a way to win. That's a tough football team. I watched this game, and it was a great football game. C.J. Stroud, the perennial Heisman favorite, 24-34, 223, 2 touchdowns. And it was a pedestrian 223. It wasn't like this was an explosive football game for Ohio State. It really wasn't. They ran the ball very effectively, too, especially at the end of the ball game. So here's the recap for this one. They really struggled offensively. So what did they do? They leaned on their defense. Revamped defense, new defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles, who came over from Oklahoma State. So the story of the night was the defense, according to Ryan Day. To turn around and play the way they did after what's been said about them in the offseason and questioning their toughness, and play the way they did against the number 5 ranked team in the country. Ryan Day thought the energy was off the charts for the defense last night. The first regular season meeting of the storied programs since 1996 was a homecoming for first-year Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman. He played linebacker at Ohio State, and he's only 36 years old, and he's the head coach. Freeman is 0-2 as a head coach after losing a bowl game just weeks after being named Brian Kelly's successor. The Irish hung with the high-scoring Buckeyes for most of 3 quarters, frustrating C.J. Stroud and putting together a couple of first-half scoring drives. You know, Freeman said we battled for 2.5 quarters, but then they scored with 17 seconds left in the third, and we didn't respond. Ohio State's defense had struggles against the run last year. They didn't have any struggles stopping the run last night. Day turned over his defensive staff in the offseason, bringing in Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State to be defensive coordinator. How quickly the Buckeyes would pick up a scheme that is considered more complicated and multiple than one they've been running was an open question, and I personally thought they did a heck of a job last night. Notre Dame managed just 253 yards of total offense and punted on their last 6 possessions. The Irish defense could only hold up for so long. On a 3rd and long, Notre Dame brought multiple blitzers, and Ohio State gave Stroud plenty of time to find Xavier Johnson open down the deep middle for a score from 24 yards out, put the Buckeyes up 14-10 with 17 seconds left in the third, and that's all Ohio State seemingly needed to win that football game. Mayan Williams, who missed the national champion, who missed a portion of the season last year. He missed the national championship game against Alabama 2 years ago. Ran for 84 yards on 14 carries, and Travion Henderson had 91 yards on 15 carries. So between the two of those running backs, 29 carries, 175 yards. And that's what Ohio State leaned on in the second half, was that running game. Ohio State led the nation in scoring in yards per play last season, but for most of last night, it was a struggle. And Ryan Day seemed thrilled to see his team battle their way through it. So here's the takeaway here. For Taylor Buckner, completed his first 8 passes and then went 2 for 10 the rest of the way. The Irish got creative and made some big catches in the first half to move the ball, but ran out of answers. Smith and Jigba last season setting Rose Bowl record after Rose Bowl record, finished with 2 catches for 3 yards. The Buckeyes' best receiver room filled with blue chippers, but it was Johnson, a fifth-year senior, and a former walk-on who caught the go-ahead touchdown. Ohio State honored its 2002 national championship team during a quick on-the-field ceremony in the first half with former head coach Jim Tressel and dozens of former players, including Maurice Claret. Tressel reluctantly was hoisted onto the shoulders of 2 former players, and the crowd erupted. The first game, it's the 100th season of Ohio Stadium, and drew 106,549 and attracted LeBron James and his son Bronny to the Ohio State sideline. With the NFL season a week away, former Buckeyes Justin Fields and Chase Young were among a host of active professional players in attendance as well. Oh, by the way, Joe Burrow, who was an Ohio State Buckeye before he transferred to LSU, was in attendance last night as well. Next up for Notre Dame, they get Marshall. And for Ohio State, they get Arkansas State at home next week. Tyler Buckner. I'm sorry. I said Taylor earlier. It's Tyler. So I do apologize for that one. Michigan over Colorado State, 51-7. Oklahoma and new head coach Brent Venables all over UTEP, 45-13. The Baylor Bears all over Albany, 69-10. It was NC State winning a thriller over East Carolina, 21-20. East Carolina missed a field goal as time expired and lost that football game. The number 13 ranked North Carolina State Wolfpack surviving. Didn't score in the second half. They didn't. Caleb Williams led USC to a 66-14 victory. He went 19 of 22 for 249 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was Lincoln Riley's debut as head coach of the Trojans, and they were all over Rice. Miami and first-year head coach Mario Cristobal beating Bethune-Cookman 70-13. Henry Parrish, the Ole Miss transfer running back, 14 carries, 108 yards, 3 touchdowns for the Hurricanes. Wisconsin all over Illinois State, 38-0. Mentz for Wisconsin goes 14 out of 16 for 219 and a score. A final in 3 overtimes. Houston over UT San Antonio, 37-35. The Road Runners giving Houston a run for their money. Gave them some fits there, and the Road Runners unable to defeat Houston. And the number 25 ranked BYU Cougars over South Florida, 50-21. BYU's schedule sets up for them to make some noise in the top 25. Whether or not they're good enough to sneak in as a college football playoff contender is still slim. The chances there are still slim for them. But, we'll see. The opportunity might be there depending on how they perform during the season with their schedule. Let's pull up BYU's schedule here real quick. They get Baylor next week, and then Oregon their next 2 weeks. BYU, look at this. The teams on their schedule. I mean, that BYU's a good football team. I'm not going to take anything away from BYU, but if they can pull out wins. I mean, there's enough teams on this schedule that if they, for whatever reason, they end up going undefeated, they could get into the college football playoff with this schedule. They get number 10 Baylor next week at home. They travel to Oregon. They host Wyoming and Utah State to round out September. They're on the road at Notre Dame. They host Arkansas. They're at Liberty. They play East Carolina. They're at Boise State. They get a Utah Tech, and then they're at Stanford. So for the Independent to make a run, there's opportunity for them here. So let's keep an eye on BYU. But to start the season, 50-21 over South Florida is a great start for the Cougs. So again, let's see what happens there. Again, the story of the day yesterday was two things. Ohio State in a dogfight against Notre Dame, surviving the Irish. Here are your storylines, basically. Surviving the Irish for Ohio State. They survived Notre Dame, pulled away at the end, very close football game. Florida upsetting Utah. Look, the entire Pac-12 schedule is still in front of them. They can make noise. They can potentially win the conference. If they win the conference, play well, this Florida loss may not be that big of a deal to them, depending on how Florida plays the remainder of the year. They are still well within the window of opportunity to make a run at the college football playoff. Utah, the opportunities for Utah are still there. Was it a bad loss? It remains to be seen. It's not a good loss. No losses are good, but it remains to be seen. The other story here was how dominant Georgia looked against Oregon. 49-3 against the number 11 ranked team in the country. Georgia seemingly has not lost a beat, and the leadership of Stetson Bennett is still in that locker room. This is a team that could potentially make a run to repeat as national champions. All of these storylines we may think are too early to tell what happens the rest of the way, but in college football, one loss can dethrone your entire season if you have national championship aspirations. And for teams like Utah, that could be the case. But if Florida ends up playing well, and let's say Florida finishes 9-3 this season, does that bode well for Utah if Utah runs the table the rest of the way? It could very well happen that way. It could very well be the case. A one-loss Pac-12 team, and it wasn't a Pac-12 loss, that could be a big-time accomplishment for Utah if they're able to do that. Whew. All right, so next week, games on the schedule. Oh, by the way, the NFL starts next week. And one more thing, I'm going to be back on Tuesday. Chris and I are going to be on Tuesday. Chris is going to join me. We're going to have live coverage of our fantasy draft on Tuesday night. So you don't want to miss that. Fantasy draft Tuesday night right here live on Cigar and Beverage on my Facebook page, on the Paul Wonder Facebook page. You might want to find that and go from there. So next week, week 2 in college football, Alabama is at Texas. For the early kickoff there. Arkansas State at Ohio State. Southern Miss travels to play Miami. South Carolina at Arkansas in an SEC tilt there. Wake Forest travels to Vanderbilt. So this will be Vanderbilt's first test of the year. Let's see. Duke plays Northwestern. I'm looking for other top 25 games of interest. Appalachian State. Oh, yeah. Appalachian State scored 40 points in the fourth quarter and came up 2 points short against North Carolina. And here's what got me about that one. Mac Brown was seen dancing in the locker room, in the North Carolina locker room after that game, after they gave up 40 points in that football game. in the second quarter of that football game and almost lost. So Appalachian State is going to travel to College Station to play A&M, and let's not write off Appalachian State in this one just yet. Let's not do that, because the opportunity for Appalachian State is going to be an interesting one. If they play as well as they did against North Carolina, A&M's going to be in for a dogfight. Not going to say Appalachian State's going to win that football game, but A&M is going to have to pay attention this week in practice and in the film room when planning for Appalachian State. Tennessee travels to Pittsburgh to take on the Pitt Panthers. Washington State travels to Wisconsin. Let's see. Georgia hosts Samford. Houston is at Texas Tech. Iowa and Iowa State. Iowa winning 7-3, and they didn't score a touchdown to get to the 7 of a field goal and 2 safeties against South Dakota. Iowa's a winner. Definitely not easy. And if anybody picked the over in that game yesterday between Iowa and South Dakota, bad. Old Dominion, who came off of the win against Virginia Tech, will play East Carolina. Not a top 25 game there. Central Arkansas plays Ole Miss. Kent State at Oklahoma. Arizona State travels to Stillwater to take on Oklahoma State at Boone Pickens, so that'll be an interesting ball game. Pac-12 game on ABC next week. USC is at Stanford. Let's see. Hawaii is at Michigan. And Baylor is at BYU, so that is the lone game amongst top 25 teams. Baylor at BYU. That one's going to be on ESPN from LaVell Edwards Stadium in Provo. Week 1 still not over. We got LSU, Florida State tonight, Clemson and Georgia Tech tomorrow in Atlanta. So that's going to be 2 very highly anticipated football games coming up to finish the season. Oh, here's an interesting one. One more thing. Next week, FS1, 10 p.m. kickoff, Mississippi State and Arizona in Tucson. So Mississippi State going to have to travel out to the desert to take on the Wildcats. Mike Leach in another Pac-12 matchup. All right, so that's all that I have for today. LSU and Florida State should be a great football game tonight in the Superdome. So grab your favorite cigar, grab your favorite beverage, sit back, relax, watch the football game. Join me back here on Tuesday for live coverage of the fantasy draft. Should be a good one, a great broadcast. So we'll be on later, for a longer period of time. So I can't wait to join you once again. And like always, can't wait to see you here once again. Talk to y'all later. Y'all have a great rest of your Labor Day weekend.